Those who see what is happening are likely observing with cautious optimism, and those who do not understand or see what is happening are very likely voicing fear-mongered panic of economic ruin or world war. Over the last few weeks, CVN has been attempting to share the story of the people and why they are claiming to want change. The will of the people seems to suggest that President Yanukovych has not been treating his own people very well. This apparently set the stage for the next level of deception. History is showing how the global cabal funds both sides of a war in order to perpetuate war into no-win scenarios for everyone except the banking cartels. The cabal needed to be seen by the world as supporting the will of the people, so they stood against Yanukovych, even though Yanukovych was originally supporting greater European integration. The Western media are hyping the angle of Russian invasion while not addressing their own involvement in orchestrating the events that have unfolded. It was in early February when the U.S. was embarrassed by a leaked phone call between U.S. Assistant Secretary of State Victoria Nuland and U.S. Ambassador to Ukraine Jeffrey Pyatt discussing ideas for a plan for Ukraine leadership. And Nuland, in other chosen expletives, tells the EU that they can go screw themselves. CVN reported last week a Press TV story indicating that Israelis were involved in orchestrating violence within the protests, and further reports have surfaced supporting this information. Press TV reported on March 1st, citing sources from two Israeli sources, Haaretz and Times of Israel, that an Israeli army veteran, identified as Delta, has been leading a street-fighting gang in Kiev. On March 5th, RT.com reported another hacked phone conversation has revealed another piece to the puzzle. According to this article, the snipers who shot at protesters and police in Kiev were allegedly hired by Maidan leaders, according to a leaked phone conversation between the EU Foreign Affairs Chief Catherine Ashton and Estonian Foreign Affairs Minister, which has emerged online. There is now stronger and stronger understanding that behind the snipers, it was not Yanukovych, but it was somebody from the new coalition, Ermas Pate said during the conversation. I think we do want to investigate. I mean, I didn't pick that up. That's interesting. Gosh, Ashton answered. The article also goes on to detail information provided by a doctor that indicates that people from both sides were being targeted and shot by snipers. The article quotes Minister Pate as saying, and second, what was quite disturbing, this same Olga Bogomolets, told as well that all the evidence shows that the people who were killed by snipers from both sides, among policemen and then people from the streets, and they were the same snipers killing people from both sides, the Estonian FM stressed. Ashton reacted to the information by saying, well, yeah, that's terrible. The article explains more about this doctor, writing that Olga Bogomolets was the main doctor for the Maidan Mobile Clinic when the protests turned violent in Kiev. She treated the gravely injured and helped organize their transportation to neighboring countries who had expressed a willingness to treat those with severe wounds. From the outset, Olga blamed the injuries and deaths on snipers. She turned down the position of Vice Prime Minister of Ukraine for Humanitarian Affairs that was offered to her by the coup-appointed regime. The Estonian Foreign Minister had commented that the actions of the snipers were disturbing and that it already discredits the new government claiming to have power. So there is a president removed from power. There is a new government claiming to represent the will of the people. The will of the people do not seem to be satisfied. There is a former prime minister who is telling the people to continue to fight for their rights. There are Israelis within the protesters who are leading the fighting. There are snipers killing people on both sides of the conflict, suggesting that some external force is interfering with the internal affairs of Ukraine. We have an allegation of a CIA agent having been arrested within the protesters. We have a body of politicians claiming power, and then we have two world superpowers jockeying for position under the guise of confrontation to possibly use the crisis to launch a new global financial system and take down the global banking cabal. I hope I haven't missed anything there. A Reuters article on March 5th had reported that Estonia denied that a leaked telephone call showed that its foreign minister had blamed opponents of Ukraine's deposed president for sniper killings during last month's unrest, as Russian media have suggested. At the same time, however, Estonia did confirm that the recording of the conversation was in fact authentic. The conversation is a bit difficult to hear, so it will not be aired, but a link to it will be in the show summary. The game has now begun, with both the U.S. and Russia lobbying threats of sanctions and seizures. On March the 6th, RT.com reported that the EU was putting a halt to negotiations with Russia to extend visa-free travel between European countries and Russia. On March 3rd, Michael Snyder, writing for investmentwatchblog.com, noted that the apparent lining up of Russia and China in this dispute represents very bad news for the U.S., and more details of this will come in the financial news. In Crimea, an earthquake was reported, and sources are apparently trying to link the seismic event to the HARP system. A few other events that have been unfolding in Ukraine and in Crimea this week. The neocon Western media is trying to paint Russia as an aggressor when so far it seems that Russia is operating within terms of its existing treaties. Although the Crimean Peninsula answers to Kiev, it has its own autonomous government. And, as you will hear later, Dave Schmidt comments that this is a similar arrangement as is Puerto Rico to the United States. The Crimean government has apparently also voted to secede from Ukraine, so this may raise question about whether or not it is in fact an invasion. There are extensive Russian interests on the peninsula, and a majority of people there are native Russians. The demand being made by Putin has been pretty simple. Remove all Western influence from the internal affairs of Ukraine. This may be an indirect jab at the banking cabal that is seeking to control Ukraine, and they may very well get taken down if a forced collapse of the old financial system becomes the necessary tool to implement the new system. So as Western and neocon agents and organizations line up against Russia to blame them for what's going on, a media war appears to have broken out within the U.S. against RT, the Russia Today media network. RT's Abby Martin appears to have kick-started the string of events with comments she made on her own show, criticizing the Russian position on events, and then following it up with criticism on the U.S. position. She went from being a hero on the first day to becoming a pariah and a target on the second day. But regardless, she achieved a higher sense of fame and recognition virtually overnight. Suddenly, we have another RT personality, news anchor Liz Wall, announcing on air that she is resigning because she cannot stand the whitewashing of Putin's actions in Ukraine. In what is claimed to be an exclusive interview with James Kirchick of the DailyBeast.com news website, here is what Wall had to say in explaining her reasons for quitting. She is quoted as follows: "As a reporter on this network, I face many ethical and moral challenges, especially me personally, coming from a family whose grandparents came here as refugees during the Hungarian Revolution, ironically to escape the Soviet forces," she told network viewers, immediately following a report claiming that the new Ukrainian government, which ousted pro-Russian President Viktor Yanukovych, is composed mainly of fascists and neo-Nazis. "I'm very lucky to have grown up here in the United States. I'm the daughter of a veteran. My partner is a physician at a military base where he sees every day the first-hand accounts of the ultimate prices that people pay for this country. And that is why personally I cannot be a part of a network that whitewashes the actions of Putin. I am proud to be an American and believe in disseminating the truth, and this is why after this newscast I am resigning. Kirchhoff also writes that even though Martin was critical of Russia, also in her program, RT offered Martin the opportunity to go to Crimea to see for herself what was going on there. This offer was declined. Here is where some suspicion begins to creep in. CVN sent a message to Ms. Wall asking for an opportunity to exchange information on what may be happening in the bigger picture of global shift. Wall has yet to accept this invitation. So why might Wall therefore not only resign in disagreement over editorial policy, but also choose to do it in a very public, very spectacular way at the same time when the world is trying to denounce Russia for shutting down the global banking cabal? Let's follow some tracks. Kirchhoff, working for the Daily Beast, also writes for Israel's Haaretz News publication and is also a fellow with the Foreign Policy Initiative. He himself is Jewish, based in Berlin. If you track the Daily Beast website, you are led to a Wikipedia listing saying that it is owned by a company called IAC, Interactive Corp. Wikipedia says that IAC is an American internet company with over 50 brands across 40 countries, headquartered in New York. The chairman and senior executive is Barry Diller, who was previously head of Paramount Pictures, Fox Broadcasting, and USA Broadcasting. If we do a Wikipedia search on this CEO, Barry Diller, we find that he is also Jewish. He is one of the major Jewish media executives controlling the mainstream media in the U.S. Now, in order to protect myself, once again for the benefit of new listeners, I am not anti-Jewish. I do not resonate with the actions, however, of a particular group of influential people advocating a Zionist agenda who happen to be of Jewish origin. So a red flag goes up to discover that an Israeli journalist scores an exclusive interview on a website that is controlled by a neocon Jewish media executive with a news reporter who has taken a very public departure from an organization that has represented a threat to American and neocon hegemony. It is no secret that Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu has been trying to start a war for years and has been failing miserably. An opportunity seems to be presenting itself where he may be trying to pull one over on Putin, which I firmly believe will be impossible. It is no secret that the global fiat currency system is in its dying days. The distraction of a potential military conflict might allow for the introduction of a new financial system, and it might also provide the cover by which some of the remaining members of the global banking cabal can be rounded up. Wall's family fled Hungary to avoid Soviet oppression, and her use of the terms fascists and neo-Nazis in describing the opposition raises some flags of question. In typical style of the neocon agenda to get people riled up to support the flag, Wall plays the card of her proud military background when, strangely enough, the only proud military servers these days, it seems, are the ones who get mainstream attention, while all the soldiers who are exposing the lies, frauds, and crimes are relegated to YouTube. There appears to be another story behind this spectacular departure. It will be interesting to see where Wall is offered her next job and who controls that company. It is my hope, however, that Wall truly left on terms honoring her truth at this time. The evidence coming out seems to be revealing that this may not be the case. It is possible that perhaps Wall was offered a high sum of money or a plump anchor job elsewhere to publicly discredit RT on the U.S. turf. RT has been known for taking steps to expose more and more of the financial fraud unfolding at this time. It certainly would be a coup if the U.S. mainstream media, controlled by those with neocon Israeli leanings, to deal a public relations disaster to RT at this time, while also fueling a warmongering agenda. Now, RT is not perfect. There will be biased editors. there may be some of the things going on there that Wall has alleged. It is a media organization, and thus it will have some of its own biases and leanings. One has to accept that about any media organization, including CVN, as I have said time and time again. Whatever I may choose for stories each week may or may not resonate with you, and this is perfectly okay. Set it aside. Do not believe any media personality or organization just because he or she or it represents the media. Take in whatever resonates with your heart in each moment to help you become the soul you choose to be. You take in whatever is meaningful and set aside whatever is not meaningful for you in the current moment of now. Wall appears to have put her faith and trust in the U.S. mainstream media, which, in the humble opinion of CVN, has been far more guilty of lies, frauds, cover-ups, crimes, and whitewashes on many different subjects than RT has been on the one subject of Putin's alleged invasion of Crimea, or of Putin in general. Kirchhoff acknowledges that Wall reached out to him roughly 6 months ago after he started criticizing Putin's stance on gays, which appears to have been severely misunderstood. He and Wall nurtured this connection, and Kirchhoff said he always encouraged her to follow her conscience in making a decision about her professional future. Kirchhoff closes his exclusive interview in saying that Wall did a very brave thing. Unlike Martin, who will continue to cash Putin's paychecks, Wall is now out of a job. But that's the price real reporters, not Russian government-funded propagandists, have to pay if they are concerned with quaint notions like objectivity and the truth. Hopefully, Liz Wall's act of defiance will inspire a wave of defections from Putin TV. I'll let you form your own conclusions about what you think that closing line may mean. Mike Adams, reporting for naturalnews.com on March 6th, notes that he also stopped doing interviews with RT for similar reasons as Wall. If Wall feels that RT is whitewashing Putin, however, Adams asks, how much have North American journalists been whitewashing? In his article, Adams also notes the following. At the same time, most of the U.S. media isn't interested in protecting the United States of America either. Instead, nearly all of the media giants exist solely to protect the interests of powerful corporations, weapons manufacturers, GMO seed companies, vaccine manufacturers, pharmaceutical factories, corporatized agriculture, and junk food giants. In reality, nearly every mainstream media journalist is whitewashing far more than Liz Wall ever did. Sure, Putin is in the middle of a military power grab in the Ukraine, but American corporations are poisoning the American people every single day through toxic foods, toxic medicines, toxic agriculture, and toxic information. Personally, and this is Mike Adams speaking, I applaud Liz Wall for what she did while at the same time condemning mainstream journalists for not doing the same. Every time you watch Anderson Cooper, Wolf Blitzer, or Christiane Amanpour report from a war zone, you are in fact watching a media prostitute apologists who are whitewashing the for-profit war industry. Whether it is in fact a military power grab or a very strategic game of chess with bigger objectives being played out by Obama and Putin, the game only gets more interesting from here. In other geopolitical news, if there was a possible sign that President Obama was beginning to assert himself in facing the cabal shadow government and taking on the once powerful Israeli lobby in Washington, 2 articles posted on Israeli news websites have indicated that Obama has abandoned Israel and that the U.S. won't be able to defend Israel if peace talks fail. The first article on March 3rd by Lee Speyer of the BreakingIsraelNews.com website wrote, United States President Barack Obama is laying down some ground rules when it comes to the Israeli-Palestinian peace process. In an interview with Bloomberg, Obama warned Israel that it could expect sanctions and international isolation should Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu fail to support a framework peace agreement. In the interview, Obama quoted the Jewish sage Rabbi Hillel when he stated that his message to Netanyahu is, "If not now, when? And if not you, Mr. Prime Minister, then who?" Obama criticized Netanyahu and said that the Israeli Prime Minister does not believe that a peace deal with the Palestinians is the right thing to do for Israel. He suggested that Netanyahu articulate an alternative approach. When asked about a possible fallout between Israel and Palestinians, Obama offered a veiled threat to Israel. The United States would no longer be able to effectively defend Israel. Obama condemned Israeli construction on activities in settlements and East Jerusalem, arguing that building settlements was the most counterproductive action to peace Israel could make. The second article by Adiv Sturman on March the 2nd on the timesofisrael.com website goes a little bit further, as Sturman writes that Israel can expect to face international isolation and possible sanctions from countries and companies across the world if Benjamin Netanyahu fails to endorse a framework agreement with the Palestinians. U.S. President Barack Obama cautioned this on Sunday ahead of a meeting with the Israeli Prime Minister. Netanyahu was in Washington earlier this week, and tensions were evident as Netanyahu tried to keep the focus on Iran and its nuclear issues, while Obama was focusing on Israel's unlawful settlements in the West Bank, and also while the issue of Ukraine hung over both of them. Israel is already facing condemnation on at least one front. An article by Dave Zirin on the Nation.com website on March the 3rd writes that the Palestinian soccer club has been under attack by the Israeli state. Zirin writes, their names were Jawar Nasser Jawar, who is 19, and Adam Abd al-Rahuf al-Baiya, 17 years of age. They were once soccer players in the West Bank. Now they are never going to play sports again. Jawar and Adam were on their way home from a training session in the Faisal al-Husseini Stadium on January 31st when Israeli forces fired upon them as they approached a checkpoint. After being shot repeatedly, they were mauled by checkpoint dogs and then beaten. 10 bullets were put into Jahar's feet. Adam took 1 bullet in each foot. After being transferred from a hospital in Ramallah to King Hussein Medical Center in Amman, they received the news that soccer would no longer be a part of their futures. This attack has apparently put Israel's membership within the Fédération Internationale Football Association at risk, as Zirin writes that the shooting into the feet of Jahar and Adam has taken a delicate situation and made it an impossible one. Sporting institutions like FIFA and the International Olympic Committee are always wary about drawing lines in the sand when it comes to the conduct of member nations. But the deliberate targeting of players is seen, even in the corridors of power, as impossible to ignore. As long as Israel subjects Palestinian athletes to detention and violence, their seat at the table of international sports will never be short of precarious. An online blogger, Ferrari Shepherd, had an article he wrote go viral entitled, "I traveled to Palestine, Israel, and discovered there is no Palestinian-Israeli conflict." Shepherd had an interview on RT.com, but time does not allow this week to air the video. For those interested in this story and the comments made by Shepherd, the links will be in the show summary. It seems those holding a Zionist agenda are becoming increasingly more desperate in the face of collapsing control of their global cabal. Any who seem to stand opposed to global change moving forward are seemingly finding themselves being increasingly more isolated on the global stage. As always, the vision is to hold the energies of peace and harmony, and we also send energies of love to each and every individual in any part of the world where there is challenge, where there is violence, and where there is uprisings taking place, so that each soul will awaken into his or her greatest service at this time to humanity and our planet. In Saudi Arabia, it appears that even the women there are slowly beginning to awaken and to become more active in standing up and speaking out, following on the energies of others from around the world. RT.com reported on March the 2nd in a story that notes that women's rights activists in Saudi Arabia have petitioned the country's Shura Consultative Council, calling for limits to be imposed on the absolute authority of male guardians over women, according to one petition signatory. Activist Aziza Youssef told Agence France Presse they had demanded measures to protect women's rights. Youssef says that many of the proscriptions against women, for example, those which forbid women to work, travel, or perform certain surgeries without the consent of a male guardian, are not based on religious teaching. The petition, signed by 10 female activists, also demands that women be allowed to drive in the ultra-conservative Sunni Muslim kingdom. In Canada, more and more of our Indigenous communities are awakening to understand the depths to which they and the rest of Canadians have been enslaved to corporate fiction entities and to a controlling corporate entity, the entity known as Canada. An article appearing on the westcoastnativenews.com website on March 5th by John Ruiz Dempsey has begun exposing publicly what many have known privately for some time. Dempsey writes, "Today, Canada is a paper nation, created, controlled, and dominated by criminal banksters and lawyers who work for the corporation government. It is certainly not a government of the people, as most paper Canadians might think of as what Canada is. It is neither a democratic government simply because the people have been given the privilege of suffrage with regards to some de facto right to vote their favorite politicians into certain positions within their corporate provincial and federal governments. Being allowed to elect politicians to rule over them does not make anything democratic, if at all. As mere paper corporation, Canada is anything but democratic. Neither is it a republic. Canada exists only on paper, in maps, legal claims, concessions, treaties, contracts, leases, grants, and the list goes on ad infinitum. It does not exist lawfully and in truth. The government of Canada is neither a nation nor a government of the people, by the people, and for the people. It is a government owned and operated by international banksters. The government of Canada comes in many forms. For example, the Crown, Her Majesty the Queen, Regina, are simply some of the many front names used by the legal owners and operators of the said paper corporation. Their legal system is designed to keep us in our proper place, the total slavery of everyone, their version of the maxim equal justice for all, which in reality is equal injustice to all. They treat every slave the same, but the slave cannot rise above his master." Dempsey continues in his article that the fact that there is no such thing as Canada has been known and even admitted to. Dempsey writes that what has been tacitly admitted by its own Justice Department by their own failure to produce any cogent evidence that Canada and its so-called government are in lawful possession of any lawful authority to exist as a nation. This fact has been admitted by its own Governor-Generals, that the government of Canada is de facto, meaning it exists in fact only, but does not exist lawfully. This is a well-known fact and is well supported by history. The brief history of Canada speaks for itself about the plunder, fraud, deception, genocide, slavery, mass murder, ethnic cleansing, germ warfare, and all forms of crimes against humanity. The corporate legal system has created an extensive library of rules, and these rules were written in a language that could not be understood by the masses and could only be interpreted by those who were trained to speak and apply that language. This language contributed to the turning of rules into law. The vast majority of these rules were never consented to by the electorate. They were created under the assumed authority taken for granted by majority governments on all political parties. Thankfully, however, humans in North America and worldwide are beginning to see this illusion and can begin to hold elected officials accountable to this enslavement. Dempsey sums it up this way: simply repainting a stolen car does not exonerate the thief who stole the car. Neither does it alter the fact that the car had been stolen from the real owner. This is called coloring the law. The British legal system operates within Canada under the same colored law. In financial news this week, there has been some speculation that the events unfolding in Ukraine may be connected either directly or indirectly to changes unfolding in the global financial sector. Now that the mainstream media is starting to pick up on the idea that there is at least some kind of change about to happen in the world of finance, and even IMF Managing Director Christine Lagarde has said that a reset is necessary, one can only look at global events unfolding and wonder how it may all be tied together. We will likely not know the full answer to that question until after the dust settles. I offered the speculation 5 days ago on my CBN Facebook page that Obama and Putin may in fact be working together to help bring in the global change. Since the cabal is trying to stop the new financial paradigm from coming in, this puts Obama in a very hard position to do anything himself. However, with the Ukraine situation, Obama now carries the military leverage to provoke Russia into possibly cashing U.S. bonds, which will have the effect of collapsing the U.S. dollar and perhaps initiating the global currency reset. It is my very personal feeling that Obama and Putin will both get what they want, and the world will get what it wants from what is unfolding in the Ukraine. In the meantime, Dave Schmidt, a former state senator for Washington, a market trader and minister, commented on possible links between Ukraine and the global financial changes on a video he posted on his website, thesedonaconnection.com. Dave seems to share a somewhat similar perspective, although he does not speculate on any possible partnership between Obama and Putin. Dave has posted information previously from sources such as World Bank whistleblower Karen Hudes and former Assistant Secretary of the U.S. Treasury Paul Craig Roberts, where both are saying that we are heading for a global currency collapse. The news is, however, starting to move into the mainstream.
There was an article 2 days ago in Forbes magazine that is saying that we are very likely headed in that direction. That means the mainstream media is beginning to pick this up. That's how serious it is and how much they are aware of what's going on. So we're heading for a global currency collapse, but the only thing that stops it is a global currency reset. And what we have is this situation of two political parts of the world that are vying against this. We have, and I'm going to use the term G7, not G8. The G8 countries include Russia, but I'm going to talk about the G7 countries that do not include Russia. The G7 countries are all theoretically bankrupt. They are so far in debt that they are not going to be able to fully recover. And it is the Illuminati, the New World Order, the Bilderberg group, who I refer to as the cabal, that has been controlling the world's money supply literally for millenniums. When you look at history and you go back millenniums, you see a situation where it has always been a very small elite that has controlled the masses. And for millenniums, they controlled the masses politically and economically. Politically, because they were kings, monarchs, and dictators who controlled the masses. That shift and change came with the American Revolution. The American Revolution was a group of people for the first time that rose up and said, we have the ability to basically govern ourselves. And that set into motion what is called self-governance. So the people themselves were free from a political perspective. perspective, being able to choose their political leaders. But here's what I say is, yes, politically, the people got set free, but economically, we're not there yet. I say that economically, we're still in a position where an elite still controls the political economics, the money supply all around the world. And that is the cabal that still controls it. And their primary tool is the Federal Reserve here in the United States, which is the central bank of the United States. They control that, and they also indirectly control all the central banks all around the world. The World Bank is a tool of the Federal Reserve. The International Monetary Fund is a tool of the Federal Reserve. So while we have gained our freedom politically here in the Western world, in democracies, we haven't gained it economically. And I think the events that are happening right now in the Ukraine have the potential to be the turning point. I have said that we are in a form of an economic slavery, but we are in the process of history that is unfolding, and we are ready to be set free. To be set free, we have to enter into a global currency reset. That means all the economies of all the countries all around the world, the currencies of all the countries around the world, have to be reset where they go back to what is called commodity-based currencies and not fiat-based currencies. The cabal wants fiat currencies because if they can have fiat currencies, they can control the world's money supply. They also want a global currency collapse because if it collapses, they feel they can stay in control. But it's a global currency reset is what will stop that from happening. And you heard me report that there is a coalition primarily led by the BRICS countries. The BRICS countries are Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa. They have formed a coalition of over 160 countries that are stepping up against the G8 countries to say, we want the reset. The G8 countries, let me correct that, the G7 countries are basically saying no because they're under the domination and control of the cabal. Their economies are controlled by the cabal. They don't want the reset. The collapse could be the catalyst that brings the reset in. Well, if you've been following the news in the last couple of days, Russia went in and took over the control of the province of Crimea in the country of Ukraine. I'm not going to go into an extensive history and background about that, but other than just a few things. When the Soviet Union collapsed, the country of Ukraine came out of the Soviet Union, the country of Russia was separate. But there was this province that was down in the Black Sea, Crimea, that really was stuck in the middle. Crimea is ethnically, the majority of the people are Russian, so they identify with the Russian ethnic influence of the country of Russia, but they were put into the country of Ukraine. But when you also understand the politics that is there, Crimea has a political sovereignty, which means they elect their own parliament and they kind of have their own rule and their control, somewhat independent of the country of Ukraine. If I was to liken an example, it would be like Puerto Rico. Puerto Rico is a territory of the United States, but they have their own sovereign country with their own sovereign rule. They are under a control of the United States, but they get to sovereignly govern themselves because they are a territory. They are not a state of the United States. Well, Crimea is in the same position. President Putin said, I'm going to send some troops in there to stabilize the Russian population, to protect the Russian citizens, and to stabilize our interests. And when that happened, the United States, through President Obama, cried foul. You don't have the right to go into a sovereign country and take control. And then President Obama has said that he's lining up the G7 countries and threatening Russia with economic sanctions to boot them out of the G8 and say, we're going to freeze your assets that you have in our countries. Well, guess what happened yesterday? China decided to line up with Russia. So now you have this Russian going against the G7 countries. And folks, do you see what's unfolding here? It's the BRIC countries telling the G7, we're probably going to call your bluff. You're saying you're going to produce economic sanctions on us? We're saying we are now strong enough economically to call your bluff. And if you attempt to do that, you will only create your own problem. Why is that? Well, Russia and China combined own over 25% of the U.S. debt. The bonds that the United States put out, they could put those bonds out on the open market and sell them, and it would crush the United States economically. Because the United States right now, my understanding is they don't have the money to pay for those bonds. It would create a huge drop in the value of the dollar. The second thing is Russia is the second largest oil exporting country in the world, second only to Saudi Arabia. Most of their oil goes to Europe. They have huge natural gas exports that go to Europe. They could tell the European G7 countries, along with the United States, we're calling your bluff. We can put your bonds on the market, we can shut off your oil, and we can shut you down economically. Yes, the United States is the strongest military power in the world, but what's really taking place here right now is a battle of who is the strongest economic power in the world.
In a bit of a correction to the comments made by Schmidt, the Forbes article on March 5th was not exactly a full endorsement by China towards Russia. There were some sources, however, within the U.S. media that were reporting China as publicly siding with Russia, which might suggest the cabal media was trying to turn public opinion against China also, since China will be a major player within the unfolding global currency reset. This Forbes article suggests, however, that it was more like a soft niet, or no, in Russian. China is in a delicate position, according to the article, because it is a country that has upheld its policy of non-interference in the internal affairs of other countries. According to this article, some think China's policy of non-interference will be tested in this matter, and that if China supports Russia, it will become ensnared in a diplomatic trap. This is the mentality of the weak. The West has interfered in the internal affairs of many countries, but never admitted it. China, however, has a long-standing relation with Russia, so China may be trying to play the quiet advocate of finding a peaceful solution. What might that solution be? Well, since China is now arguably the world's largest holder of gold reserves, a global currency reset would be such a solution that might fit this bill. There is also an update to the comments made by Schmidt. An article in the timesofIndia.com on March the 7th reported that India, another member of the BRICS alliance, is now coming out in support of Russia against the U.S., the G7, and the global banking cabal. According to this article, Chinese President Xi Jinping was quoted last week by the official Chinese media as he weighed in on the Ukraine issue. Xi said, "At present, the situation in Ukraine is highly complicated and sensitive and has regional and global impact," Xi told Putin. China believes that Russia can coordinate with other parties to push for the political settlement of the issue so as to safeguard regional and world peace and stability. China supports proposals and mediation efforts of the international community that are conducive to reduction of tension. Each country seems to be positioning itself for what may be about to unfold for the highest good of all and our planet. The link to the full commentary offered by Schmidt will appear in the show summary. In other financial news, an article has surfaced for the benefit of homeowners, but more especially those homeowners who have a mortgage. Ireland is one of the countries that has begun awakening in big ways to the financial frauds being committed by banks. An Irish blog site, awakenlongford.wordpress.com, has reposted an article where credit is given to the good souls from South Africa, with the banking movement there known as the New Economic Rights Alliance. Now, this article is in fact quite old, from January of 2013. However, the questions being asked are questions that are worthwhile for people to know and be familiar with. As well, they would be beneficial to have handy when you are talking to your bank or loan manager. Now, that is assuming that a bank or loan manager might be willing to choose to answer these questions. The article lists the 10 questions that anybody who has a mortgage should be asking their bank loan manager. These are the things that you are entitled to know. Question 1, am I indebted to the bank right now? And that would be a yes or no question. 2, please confirm that the bank actually possessed the money they claim to have lent me prior to my loan being granted. In other words, did the bank physically have the money they lent me prior to the money appearing in my account? 3, would the bank be prepared to amend the credit agreement as follows? We, the bank, did in fact possess the money we loaned you prior to the loan being approved. 4, was the loan funded by assets belonging to the bank at the time the loan was granted? Either way, please describe in detail the accounting process used to create my loan. 5, did the bank record my promissory note or negotiable instrument as an asset on its books? If yes, how was my instrument used to create my loan, and where is my valuable promissory note or negotiable instrument now? 6, does the bank participate in a securitization scheme whereby debts or promissory notes are bundled and then sold on to a third party or parties via special purpose vehicles, entities, or alike processes? 7, with reference to point 6, has my loan been securitized? If so, please send me all details regarding its securitization. 8, does the bank have a legal right to collect money it claims I owe it? If so, then where does this legal right come from, assuming the loan has been securitized? 9, has my loan with the bank been settled by a special purpose vehicle, insurance policy, or by any other party? And 10, regarding the security given to the bank by me, has this security been sold on or given as security or surety to another party? Now, CBN has reported in the last couple of weeks the importance of asking questions and making people explain what it is they are giving you. At that time, we looked at the medical profession and how vital it is that you make a doctor explain what it is that he or she is giving you and why. The same can be said here. When you buy a car, you ask questions to make sure you know what you are getting. Make your bank manager or loan manager explain it to you. You might actually be helping a bank employee to awaken to what is going on. For those who are interested, the article offers a deeper explanation for each of those 10 questions. I may choose to post those explanations directly into the show summary as well. However, if not, they will at least appear in the link, which will be in the show summary. The virtual currency world was shaken this week in the wake of the announcement that Autumn Radke, the 28-year-old CEO of Bitcoin exchange company First Meta, based in Singapore, was found dead near her home. Radke, according to website newswatch.us on March the 2nd, was formerly the director of business development at a gaming company called Xfire and was also the co-founder of business development at Geodelic Systems Incorporated. The initial reports are calling the death a suicide, although foul play cannot be ruled out in light of all the other suspicious banking deaths lately. The sudden closing of Bitcoin exchange center Mt. Gox may be tied into the death also. Given her extensive business background, despite her young age, it does not seem likely that she would have succumbed to stress-related guilt as a result of the collapse of Mt. Gox, and the current volatility of the cryptocurrency. The company stated in the article that they would be making a statement when more information was known. Last week, CBN aired part 1 of some highlights from an interview given by Gregg Braden at a Romanian mainstream television station. The whole interview was about 54 minutes in length, and this week we continue with part 2 of some of the highlights of the remaining 25 minutes. We continue where we left off, that our bodies are designed to heal themselves.
So our bodies are designed to heal themselves. And our own science now has shown every organ in every cell, every organ in our body has now been documented with the potential to heal itself. Even organs we were told could not heal themselves. Brain tissue, heart tissue, spinal cord tissue, pancreatic tissue, all has been documented at regeneration and healing under the right conditions and the right environment. So the thinking of science is that the environment must come from a pill or a machine. Exterior. Our most cherished traditions always told us that we had the ability to do this for ourselves, but science didn't really understand that. And now science is beginning to validate that we may create within our own bodies through the power of emotion, heart-based emotion, the very experiences that began healing the human body.
Have you ever tried it on yourself?
I will share with you a story. The answer is yes. In the year 2000, I went for an annual physical, and my doctor told me that I had a growth inside of my bladder that should not be there and needed to come out quickly. He scheduled surgery. Before I went into the doctor, I had studied all my life ancient traditions, ancient texts in the monasteries of Tibet and Bolivia and Peru. And I said, if I were ever going to apply these in my life, now is the time. So when my doctor gave me the diagnosis, I said, give me 2 weeks to work with myself. And I did everything that I'd been taught to do. But still, I had the doubt in my mind. So I went to the hospital. I went to the procedure. I woke up in the recovery room, and the doctor said, why are you here? There's nothing inside of you to remove. I think why it was good for me to have the experience, because I had studied all of the traditions, and I knew it was possible. But because I had the experience myself, I can look you in the eye, I can look at our listeners and our viewers, and I can say, I have this experience, and I know it's possible. And I also know that it may not be easy, because when our body has an illness or a disease, we lose the faith in our body. We lose trust. And we must work to overcome that. And I think it's the greatest lesson for any of us to learn, because once we discover that we have that ability, we feel differently about life and our friends and our families, and we feel differently about our relationship to the world. So I can look at you and say, what I did was all the things that I learned to do to create the coherence, the heart-brain coherence, to heal the anger, to heal the hurt, heal the frustration, create the coherence between my heart and my brain to the best of my ability throughout the day. I did it as many times as I could. And I cannot say that is the only reason. As a scientist, I have to say I think it was a factor in the healing that I experienced. So I'm not saying that we understand everything. What I'm saying is that new discoveries that are not shared in the classroom or in the mainstream media now are opening the door to new possibilities to give us new ways to think about ourselves and our relationship to the world. Personal healing is a part of that.
At this point, the presenter had a little bit of trouble formulating a question about a particular scientific experiment that had been going on involving photons, and she asked Braden to elaborate further on this experiment.
What the scientists did was they took particles of light that are called photons. If our viewers are not familiar with the photon, it's the stuff that atoms are made of. So the scientists were able to take the building blocks of atoms, our world, our bodies are made of, and they put them into a vacuum. So they took all the air out of this container, and they measured to see where are they, what is the distribution, and it was random. They were everywhere, just what they expected. The next part of the experiment is they took human DNA and placed the human DNA into the vacuum with the photons. Now, to even think to do that experiment tells me that science
Had a question.
is on the edge of a big discovery. So what happened was they put the DNA in with the photons, Then they said, what is a distribution? That was the laboratory. The question is, how far does that effect extend into the real world? And this is where the scientists now are doing experiments to see if it's only localized in one place, how far something like this actually goes. So that was an example, and you were giving that example. It is difficult for many people to embrace the idea that we could possibly influence the healing of our bodies, or that we could possibly influence the peace in a community or the peace between nations. But the experiments are showing very, very clearly that this is, in fact, a possibility under the right conditions. And the reason it's possible, it all goes back to the proof that we are, in fact, connected by a field of energy. 1944, Max Planck, a Nobel Prize-winning physicist, he made a statement. It was so profound. He said, what we see as matter doesn't really exist the way we think it exists. He said, behind everything we see as matter, he said, there is a conscious and intelligent mind that is the matrix. That was his word. The matrix of all matter. John Wheeler, Princeton University, bore that out through his experiments. John Wheeler said that the universe is not complete, that it is us, the act of consciousness, is constantly interacting with the fields around us, creating our reality, essentially. The good things that happen, the bad things that happen.
So we can actually create our life in every moment, and we can change everything that happens to us in every second?
Theoretically, I think it's possible. The problem is that we say with our words, I would like to change, but in our hearts and our minds, we have the fear and the doubt that prevents that change. And this is where the real workshop of life begins.
Fans of Star Wars may recall the scene in The Empire Strikes Back where Master Yoda lifts Luke's craft out of the swamp, and Skywalker comes up to him and says, I don't believe it. And Master Yoda replies,
That is why you fail.
What quantum physics is now suggesting, and what our most cherished indigenous and ancient spiritual traditions have always said, is the world around us is nothing more, nothing less than a mirror of what we accept as our reality. So if we accept the suffering, if we accept the hurt and the pain, if we accept war as the reality, then we can certainly continue to experience that. When we claim the cooperation and the peace that is actually the model that nature is based upon, then that becomes a new reality. The key is to collectively, this is a collective choice that we must have, and that I think this is what we're exploring now. The key is this: the world changed, and no one told us. There's been no special on the BBC network or CNN network or the Discovery Channel or the History Channel that has said to the world, that looks the world in the eye and says, the world of the past that you knew 10 years ago no longer exists. And this is important for this reason. We've never had the opportunity to let that world go, to mourn and release the world of the past. So many people are clinging to the idea of the old world, and they're trying to get that world back, the world of the economy of 5 years ago. That's not possible any longer. The global debt will prevent that. The world of inexpensive energy, the cheap energy of 10 years ago, that's not possible because we've reached the peak oil. The food and the water that we're now competing for in some parts of the world, the way we're solving the problems in Egypt and Iran and Syria and Israel and the West Bank, all of these things. Those are all real-life examples of precisely what we're talking about. Unsustainable ways of dealing with everyday life based on science, false assumptions of science, competition, violent competition and separation. So now that those events are right in our face, we have to deal with them. We have new opportunities and new solutions, but many people simply don't know about the discoveries. So I will be sharing the new science that's so new. It's not in the textbooks. It's not in the classrooms. It's not in the mainstream media, but it's important in our lives. And it's important because it gives us the tools to adapt, not force the world back to the way that it used to be, rather to adapt to the new normal that is emerging in healthy, thriving ways so that we can embrace the new opportunities.
If there's one thing that each of us can do at home, like starting from now, what would that be?
That's a very good question. Based upon the false science of the past that led us to believe we live in a world of separation, we each have asked ourselves a question every day, consciously or subconsciously. When we enter a relationship, a job, a career, make a big decision, the question is, what can I get from the world that exists? That's the question. What can I get? What's in it for me? Now the question must change. Science tells us we live in a world that's connected, and it's based upon cooperation. So the new question becomes, what can I give, or what can I share? What can I contribute? What can I offer to the world that's emerging? When we make that shift from what can I get from the world that exists to what can I give to the world that's emerging, it changes everything.
Many devout practitioners of religious faith have no doubt experienced traumatic events and cried up to their divine creator, asking why such bad things happen to them when they are such good followers. The science Braden describes may now provide the answer. Faith in a divine creator does not exist externally to you. It exists internally as the being you are. The challenges a faithful practitioner experiences becomes the opportunity to know and be the goddess God in manifesting the heart-mind connection to facilitate the healing that demonstrates to others of faith how powerful one can be. The challenge given to you was not a punishment. Rather, it was the opportunity to demonstrate your ability to be the example in overcoming it, to help others awaken into their power through your example. Braden has a new book out called The Turning Point, Creating Resilience in a Time of Extremes. There's a time when every crisis can become transformation, when simply surviving can become joyous thriving. In our lives, that is the turning point. In our world, that time is now. Looking at some tech news for this week, we look at an article from March 3rd appearing on the disclose.tv website reporting that aircraft manufacturer Boeing has stepped out of the closet, so to speak, in admitting that they are working on anti-gravity propulsion systems. According to the article, Boeing has admitted it is working on experimental anti-gravity projects that could overturn a century of conventional aerospace propulsion technology if the science underpinning them can be engineered into hardware. As part of the effort, which is being run out of Boeing's Phantom Works Advanced Research and Development Facility in Seattle, the company is trying to solicit the services of a Russian scientist who claims he has developed anti-gravity devices in Russia and Finland. The approach, however, has been thwarted by Russian officialdom. Is anyone else seeing another possible correlation here as to why Russia may be targeted at this time? Now keep in mind, as has been reported on CBN in the past, the technology, the particular technology that Boeing may be using may be part of the slow cabal disclosure type of technology that would be gradually phased in over time, whereas there are other sources working on different angles of technology that may be able to introduce exactly the same thing, but in a much more rapid space of time. Of course, we know the technology has been available for decades. As I have stated before, I am in possession myself of a formerly secret document that outlines the involvement of a former aviation company called Avro Aviation that details very extensive plans for anti-gravity travel as far back as the 1950s. It is a massive and very detailed document. According to the document I have, a document which is available on the internet for those who are willing to search for it, declassified documents show that the U.S. Air Force was working on and perhaps had already built a supersonic flying saucer as far back as 1956. The aircraft, which had the code name Project 1794, was developed by the U.S. Air Force and Avro Canada in the 1950s. One declassified memo, which seems to be the conclusion of initial research and prototyping says that Project 1794 is a flying saucer capable of between Mach 3 and Mach 4, which is 2,300 to 3,000 miles per hour, with a surface ceiling or maximum altitude of over 100,000 feet or 30,500 meters, and a range of about 1,000 nautical miles or 1,850 kilometers. This particular article may have been part of a controlled disclosure of technology, as this particular article does not consider the technology to have been very successful. There are articles on the net about the project, as I mentioned, and a link to at least part of these plans will be provided in the show summary. Anti-gravity field generation for the purposes of transportation is also one of the technologies allegedly being developed by the Keshe Foundation. The patents, as released by the Foundation, allow for application development through the use of static reactors, dynamic reactors, or a combination of both. According to the website, thanks to new insights into these mechanisms and to new methods and technologies that mirror them, we have found that a vast amount of energy and gravitational force can be generated within the core of a man-made reactor. The size of our reactors varies from as small as a rechargeable battery up to a few meters for large-scale power supply or for space applications. The technology which has been developed is a totally integrated system capable of creating energy and gravity in its core. Within this system, energy is produced by the same means that govern the natural dynamics of Earth, using geomagnetic forces and principles to create energy, dynamic magnetic fields, and gravity. We have proved that it is possible to achieve lift by using gravitational positioning and without the use of fuel. Thus, by utilizing the basic forces of nature, man will be able to construct new systems for flight in space, free of man-made fuels and the shackles of Earth's gravity. So, whatever Boeing is publicly claiming at this time, it does not exactly synchronize with other information that is currently available. In health news, it is becoming increasingly evident how important nutrition really is in allowing the body to fulfill all the wondrous magic that it is capable of. Of course, it is also becoming increasingly evident the lengths to which the global cabal is willing to go to keep humanity distracted from knowing its full power, while keeping people in states of ignorance, fear, debt, and varied states of illness and disease. Earlier, Gregg Braden revealed the new science that supports the power we have within. Many souls are experiencing physical symptoms and conditions that can be linked to any one of a number of cabal attempts to keep humanity sick. CBN has looked at ADD, ADHD, and autism in the past, among others. Another increasing condition is called bipolar, a condition that exists more commonly in highly intelligent people whose brains are superactive for a period of time and then fall into a deep state of despair while the body recovers. The lack of proper nutrition has been a detriment to people who experience this condition. John Gray, whom many will recognize as the author of the Mars-Venus series of books, also does some life coaching and wellness instruction. He shares what he has discovered about the bipolar condition based on his own very personal experience.
This is a tendency, a subject that's close to my heart. My younger brother was bipolar. I did everything to try to help him, and nothing worked, and eventually he committed suicide. I tried so many different things, and I wish I knew then what I know now and what I'm going to share with you. I tried teaching him spirituality and yoga, helped a little, but didn't solve the problem. I went to school to study psychology, get a PhD in psychology so I could help my brother, and that didn't do it. Eventually, I began studying health, but that was too late. He had already committed suicide, which is very common for people with bipolar. You know, it doesn't always happen, but when your mood goes from manic to really speeded up, extreme, unrealistic, unbalanced, I can do anything, I'm Superman. You become depressed. You don't want to live. So any of this sort of extreme one way, extreme other way, there's a reason for it. And one of the basic reasons to understand is if the brain is more genius, it tends to work faster, it has a faster speed. And in order for it to function, it needs a better fuel. And particularly the fuel that's missing with people that are bipolar, the fuel that's missing, the particular missing ingredient is lithium. Not lithium carbonate, the prescription drug that they give to bipolar. They gave that to my brother, and the side effects of it caused him to want to commit suicide. So he just couldn't take the bipolar anymore. He couldn't take the bipolar medicine, which was lithium carbonate. And when he went off of his medicine, then his symptoms of bipolar came back, which made him very depressed. He didn't want to live. He didn't want to live with those symptoms of having to take the drug. What I didn't know at the time that I know now is that you can take a form of lithium called lithium orotate, which doesn't have side effects as long as you take it in the proper doses. Lithium carbonate has to be taken in toxic doses to be effective. Lithium orotate literally needs small little doses, 25 milligrams a day of lithium orotate. Over and over and over, people have reported to me and told me that their symptoms of bipolar go away or become more manageable. They do not need to take this extreme toxic drug, nor do they need to take psychotropic drugs, nor do they need to take antidepressants. All those things are toxic drugs that have side effects. They're going to cause liver problems. They're going to cause, they don't do anything to cure the problem. They just treat the symptoms and make the problem worse over time, generally speaking. So I wouldn't be putting all those things down if that was the only option, but it's not. You have these natural options over here. You get to the cause of the problem, and then you can undo it. So what caused the problem in the first place? Well, first of all, you're a genius person. And, you get a genius Mozart conducting a symphony in his head. He's using up all the brain chemicals. He needs more brain chemicals. So he crashes down until he gets enough nutrients to rebuild himself. So depending upon where you live and the quality of your food, you're going to have more and more of these bipolar symptoms, manic depressive symptoms, if you're not getting the right nutrition. So it's very important that they get this nutrition. Anytime you run out of lithium, your stress levels will go up. You'll be anxious, you'll be upset, or you'll be depressed. Any of those imbalances, and your digestion slows down. So you have to take enzymes. You have to have enzymes. You have to have easy-to-digest proteins. That's why with all health conditions, I always recommend my Mars Venus Wellness Solution, which is easy-to-digest protein shake in the morning with the ultimate foods for the brain, phosphatidylserine, phosphatidylcholine. That's the active B vitamins in egg yolks. It just are amazing for the brain. Eat lots of eggs is a really good thing. You've got the easy-to-digest proteins. You have the omega-3. You have the goji berries. These are things that are really good for optimal brain function, as well as coconut oil. So this is your foundation for anybody to be healthy, particularly if you're under stress. Now, you need more of that. You just need more of that. If you're bipolar, if you've got this super brain that goes really fast, then you need more nutrition because your brain's going to use it up. And you don't want all these extra calories, but you just need nutritionally dense food. So without having to eat huge amounts of food, you're getting those nutrients that your brain requires. The second is you want to heal the condition, and the condition is because you haven't had the nutrition and you've got this faster brain, it doesn't get what it needs. Infections will develop. Heavy metals will get in there. Your body's not working well to get rid of those infections. So now you've got inflammation in your brain that makes the problem worse and worse and worse. You want to get rid of the inflammation. I talk about this in my cure for autism, but it's using the hyperthermia, the cure that cures anything. And that you get in a bathtub, you put like an Arctic hat on your head, down Arctic hat on your head to keep the heat in your head, and then you heat the water up from 97 degrees to 101 degrees in the last 20 minutes at 103 degrees, and you do that, that's an hour. You do that every other day for 3 months, and your brain is able to get rid of inflammation, has a day off from those infections. So see, what happens is the bacteria lay eggs, so the next day those eggs start hatching, and now you get the bacteria back. But you get 1 day, every other day, that day off from doing the treatment, your immune system just kicks into gear really strong, and it can start restoring healthy function in your brain as long as you've got these extra nutrients that you need, which may be the reason you had the problem in the first place, is your mother just didn't have enough of those minerals for your super brain, or she was exposed to toxicity that interfered with certain brain functioning, which allowed other parts of your brain to speed up and need lithium faster. So there's a lot of dynamics here, but it comes down to getting rid of the inflammation in your body so that you can detoxify heavy metals and you can absorb the extra nutrition. You need nutrient-dense food. You need superfoods. You might check out other superfoods that I recommend, but at this point, those basics, just 25 milligrams of lithium orotate, and knocking a lot of sugar out of your diet and maybe taking some chelating elements, getting the heavy metals out of your body, goes a world of difference. Now, one of the most profound things that I found for people in almost many, many conditions for their health is mannose, which is the extract from aloe vera. Mannose is known to take away inflammation. It's known to produce something called glutathione in your body. And glutathione is what helps your body to detoxify these heavy metals. It helps your body to cleanse. It helps your body to heal. When you put aloe vera on your skin and the pain goes away, it's a magic ingredient. It took them a long time to figure out what that ingredient was. It's mannose. And you can take a capsule of mannose. Mannose Extreme is my favorite. And you may be getting the amount of mannose it would be in a whole plant of aloe vera. Some plants of aloe vera have more concentrated mannose. But in some cases, just one little capsule, 150 milligrams of mannose, is what you get in a whole plant. So this is amazing stuff to take a couple capsules of mannose twice a day to help your body to make more glutathione, to detoxify, where your body's also getting the lithium it needs in order to make the serotonin and balance the production of dopamine so you don't get these big extremes. So that's the answer. It's a matter of being regular on that. And what's great is then you don't have the side effects of all these other drugs. It just makes you feel depressed and feel like you have to be on these things for the rest of your life. You don't have to be on these things for the rest of your life. There are these options, and what I've just shared with you has worked for hundreds of people with bipolar, and their caretakers have written to me and told me it's been like a miracle. Their lives are changed. They're so grateful for this, because when you have bipolar, you just go from positive to dark, and people that live with you have a hard time. This can make everybody so much happier.
As souls awaken, more choices become available. Some may choose to grow healthier food and provide it to people around them to help them heal. Some will develop or perhaps follow healing regimens that will serve to be the example for others to follow. Each soul is being guided as gently as possible, according to one's soul contract, and also given the fast rate of global change, to step into higher service. Who are you choosing to be in the current moment of now? In this week's final words, I would like to take a moment to gently remind everyone about why we are here and why it is so important at this time to continue holding the energies not only for the revelation of truth, but for holding a vision of peace with a harmonious transition from those that have enslaved humanity and destroyed our planet to a new paradigm with a new economic model and a new vision for a birthing galactic star nation. We are the ones we have been waiting for, and now is the time for courageous souls who are choosing to remember who they are to start standing up and speaking out in the name of service to humanity and our planet. It is precisely in the moments of greatest challenge when we are given the opportunity to know only now how strong we can truly be, but also in how we can inspire others with that same confidence and knowing of all that you are. In a message from a celestial entity named Saul on March 3rd, Saul shared the following words via John Smallman. Saul says, "Here in the spiritual realms, which are far closer to you than you imagine, we continue to observe your sterling efforts to bring humanity to its awakening, and we delight in the amazing effect you are having all across the world. You are making it happen, and the momentum that you have established is utterly unstoppable. Remind yourself of that when you are feeling alone or down. You are, of course, never alone, and down is just a mood swing or very temporary energy drop that will not last. You have enormous support from the divine field of love that constantly embraces you, which is why, despite your doubts, fears, and anxieties, you never give up. You know, at your still point, your energy center, deep within you, that all is divinely taken care of, and that your doubts and worries are totally illusory, even though they can seem very real and valid. And that seeming reality of doubts and worries that you consistently succeed in overcoming is one of the many reasons why you are so honored, so admired here in the spiritual realms. Humanity's progress on the path to awakening continues to accelerate as the love that more and more of you are intentionally extending and sharing spreads across the world, infiltrating every human community, raising spirits and hopes for a new way of living that lays down arms permanently and engages enthusiastically in harmonious communication for the benefit of all on earth. The collective will of humanity to awaken has been roused, and it will not go back to sleep. We are witnessing at this time more collective uprisings and more collective awakenings in countries around the world that most of you never even knew anything about, because the mainstream media has failed in its service to you. The parliamentary, legal, judicial, and penal systems have failed in their service to you by enslaving you, separating you, punishing you, and keeping you fearful according to your corporate fiction identity. The bankers and banking system have failed you by keeping you in debt and fear, tied to a system where they create money out of thin air and ask you to put your homes, cars, and other items of value up as collateral against a loan that you, in fact, created yourself on your promise to repay. It is often hard to see the change when you are in the middle of it, but look around and see what humanity has accomplished and is accomplishing at this most important and critical time. Yes, humanity is even making a huge push for the disclosure of our galactic families also. Because of people just like you, uniquely different, but equally beautiful, with a passion for truth and change, we have exposed the lies and frauds about September the 11th, and in fact, all wars since World War I. We have exposed the legal system, the banking system. We have exposed members of parliament and governments for the crimes that they have been complicit in. We have exposed media, pharmaceuticals, the medical profession, biotech companies, environmental polluters, pedophile rings, Bilderberg, the Council on Foreign Relations, the neocon Zionists, and numerous false flag events such as school shootings, the Boston Marathon, and others. As we see what is now unfolding, it may be hard to pat yourself on the back while thinking that we are steps away from another world war. I choose personally not to even entertain this, and it is my gentle prayer that you will also choose not to entertain this. It may be worth considering for a moment if there is any truth to the possibility that Obama and Putin are working together at this time. There is an unfortunate advantage to making the world think that there might be a war. Every time you are faced with a crisis that potentially threatens your life, humans suddenly begin to take action. And it is this that is unfortunate, that it has to be at this point when humans will be moved into action. We act, unfortunately, at the last minute. If the cabal is to be finally removed from its power, the will of the people must be united. And if it is united on the will of peace, there will be justification for the forces of good to act on behalf of that collective will. Two leaders trying to act from within very difficult positions to remove a force that has enslaved humanity and destroyed our planet for hundreds of years. The only way to engage the people is to either make them angry enough to get engaged and learn about what is happening to them, or to perhaps help them face their mortality and realize there is something more important going on here at this time. Some of you are clearing your own energies. Some of you are also clearing energies for the collective and for Gaia herself. And thoughts and images of negativity may suddenly appear in your head about something or someone, and you might think that you are bad for having had those thoughts, when in fact it may be possible that the thoughts were not your own. On March 4th, a channeled message from a Pleiadian galactic family member named Semjase of Temer via Marianne Rada invites everyone to dare to be human. Semjase shares the words that you are of terrestrial human origin by birth, but you are also of divine life and star elements. We are also human by birth and of divine life and star elements as well. What separates us is a matter of dimensional phasing, and that is a function of long ago creation of portals and the ability to traverse them. We have that ability, and you, as yet, do not. Understand that this will change, but first you have a more pressing situation at home. Before peace, you will have some chaos. Why do we warn and not prevent? Because, dear ones, you are the ones who will avert disaster. If that is not yet clear to you, it soon will be. Your problem is not with a human or terrestrial point of origin, but with a source of non-human extraterrestrial patterning. You are going to have to expand your concept of what human is. Your current definition is far too constricting. When you confront something outside of yourself, you finally have a chance to define yourself in terms of what you are confronting. It is true for everything you do, and now is a good time to recognize that. It is becoming more and more apparent that you are waking up to the fact that reality isn't what it used to be, and that time and tone of now is upon you. Your world is changing, and so are you. Tomorrow is dawning. Home is in need of your presence. What will you make of it? We are the ones. If not now, then when? If not you, then who? Awaken, dear hearts, and know yourselves as the divine goddesses and gods that you are.